Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Black Butterflies in My Soul podcast. Thank you so much in advance for taking the time to listen to episode one. This is honestly very out of my comfort zone. I don't even fully know what's about to happen, but I'm just going to rock with it. And yeah, I'm going to try and keep this first episode short and sweet because I just want to give you guys a little intro and a little insight into my life and how I deal with certain things going on. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Bree Cruz. I'm 25. I live in Lake Charles, Louisiana. Um, I'm a daughter, a sister, a single mother, a student, a friend, and just an average girl who has dealt with anxiety and depression for many years. And I'm sure everyone listening to this podcast has dealt with one or both of these issues before, unfortunately. Um, the idea of this podcast has been on my heart for so long, and it's taken me a long time to finally be ready to speak on certain things I've been through and just share them with all of you. And I just think now is the perfect time. Like, it's obviously not you know an ideal situation that any of us are in right now. It's weird times and uncertain times, and the pandemic is crazy, but I will say through all of this, I feel like so many people have started to speak up on things. And I don't necessarily know if it's because, of the quarantine and people having extra time on their hands, but there is a lot more going on in the world than the COVID and the pandemic. Like, there's a lot of, issues that are finally being addressed and people are finally speaking on. And one of those issues I just don't think is talked about enough is depression and anxiety. And although I see, those topics and those words everywhere on social media, I hear people talking about them, I just feel like it's never talked about in depth. I feel like people are just like, yeah, I have anxiety, yeah, I'm depressed, but I feel like no one is comfortable talking about what they're having anxiety about and what they're depressed about, and how they choose to deal with that and how they've overcome it or how they can overcome it. It's just, I don't know. I'm just going to be really vulnerable. And my main purpose for this podcast is to just reach out to people's hearts and souls and help them to realize that they aren't the only ones dealing with these issues and that it's okay to talk about them and it's okay to ask for help. A lot of my friends and family will probably listen to this podcast and be like very confused because they just have no idea I've ever even dealt with these issues because I have kept them bottled up for so long. Um, for those of you that know me, I'm a loud and outgoing person. I almost always have a smile on my face, and I'm always trying my best to promote positivity in, my friends and my family and just everything I do. But at the end of the day, my depression and anxiety is eating me alive, and the traits I just described about myself are a front, and they tend to dissolve when I'm alone. The best way I can describe this is it's like makeup, but it's for my soul. I wake up every morning and I put this inner makeup on because I just hate the way I feel and I hate the inner me. And as soon as I walk out of my house and am met and greeted with society, I put on my smile and I put on my positivity and I embrace the day. But by the time I return home, my makeup has faded and dissolved, and I'm back to feeling sad, alone, depressed, anxious, and negative again. And I'm just back into the darkness. Um, I'm kind of getting ahead of myself. I kind of want to pause for a second and just take a minute to explain the name of my podcast to you because I feel like that's important. You might have read it in the description, but I'm just gonna explain it again. It's Black Butterflies in My Soul. So I'm sure everyone has either heard or used the phrase, I have butterflies in my stomach before. This phrase is usually used to portray excitement and giddiness and happiness, and I feel like most people would look at that phrase and that statement as a positive statement. Well, crazy enough, this phrase is how I describe my anxiety, sort of. When I'm having anxiety about something and feeling super anxious, I feel like I have these black, deathly, mean, dark butterflies in my soul that are just flying around obnoxiously, trying to find their way out, but there's just no way out. That's always how I've described my anxiety when, I'm trying to explain to a friend or a family member, how I'm feeling and what I'm going through. And not everyone can really understand, but, that statement and how my description of it. But, a lot of people I found have completely related to that. So that's really, where I got the idea for the name. And when I have depression and I'm feeling just dark and sad, negative, I feel like I can almost still relate to that statement. I feel like those butterflies, those dark butterflies that have been just swarming around my body have died and they're just rotting away inside of me, releasing all of this toxicness into my mind and soul. And that's, how I would describe depression for me. But, those butterflies always tend to rise again and bring anxiety back at some point. It's just a never ending cycle. It's just mentally, emotionally exhausting and draining. Um, a lot of people, unfortunately, don't even realize they are experiencing depression and anxiety. I know I didn't for a long time. I would just feel these deathly butterflies crawling around in my stomach, but I didn't understand why I was feeling that way. And I would feel tightness in my chest and heaviness on my chest to the point where it was actually hard to breathe and I would struggle, for a breath. And I just didn't understand why that was happening. I would sleep all day and wake up still exhausted and just so tired. I would just feel like I was surrounded by complete darkness at times for no reason at all. And I just did not understand any of this at all. Um, Looking back, I can remember these issues starting to, just creep into my life when I started college. And I would kind of describe this phase of my life as entering into the darkness. At this time, I didn't know exactly what was going on with me. I just remember, like I said earlier, just having days of complete darkness. I had jumped at the chance to move away for college after high school. My life, my life in high school and right after high school wasn't horrible by any means. I wasn't running away from any specific thing or any specific person. I was just ready for a fresh start to see what else and who else was out there. I picked a college still in Louisiana. I ended up going to University of Louisiana at Monroe, ULM. It seemed perfect to me because, it wasn't too close to home, but it wasn't too far. I was super excited to meet new people, go to new places, and just start my new studies and have the college experience. And, I was just like really excited, for this new chapter, this new phase in my life. But my excitement faded pretty quickly within the first, I would say month or two of college. Let me add this real quick. I'm actually from a super small town right outside of Lake Charles, which I didn't even mention earlier because some people don't even know that this place exists. But it's called Moss Bluff. And until college, I lived there my entire life. I knew almost every single person in that town. I knew everyone at my school. I would literally go to the grocery store and see at least 20 people I knew. So I never really had to meet new people or go to new places before because I grew up with the same friends and the same classmates my whole life. And I'd never before really had to be out of my comfort zone because, that small town was always my comfort zone. And I really just never had to deal with, you know, getting outside my comfort zone. Um, so when I moved to this new city and I started at this new college, I didn't necessarily put myself out there. I guess I just assumed it would happen for me and people would just come to me and introduce themselves to me. And, obviously that just didn't happen. I didn't join a sorority. That just wasn't my thing. And, I just wasn't really into that. But I had moved to this college in this new town with one friend who was a great friend to me in high school and still is. And she was my roommate. She actually joined a sorority. She met a bunch of new people and was just thriving at ULM. And I was just not. I just couldn't relate to that at all. After a few months at, my new college, I hadn't really met anyone. I was really discouraged. And this is ultimately where I think the darkness and depression and anxiousness started to come over me and kind of take over. I felt ridiculously alone for the first time in my entire life. And I just remember feeling so anxious right before I would walk into class because nobody had really, reached out to talk to me or tried to be my friend. I just assumed that because no one had, went out of their way to talk to me, that everyone just hated me and judged me. And I will say this to, anyone who, hasn't been to college or experienced it or, is still in high school or I don't really know who's listening to this, but I will just say that college is way less intimate than high school is. Like, the classes are bigger, the teachers don't care as much as they did in high school. It's just way less intimate. So, it was a big adjustment for me coming from a super small town. But, after, just having horrible experiences with the classes, I ended up just not going anymore. I would sleep all day. I was eating horribly. I was gaining weight. I just absolutely hated my life and myself. I missed my friends. I missed my family. I missed my small familiar town. I often cried myself to sleep almost every night. I remember just reaching out to guys from back home, random guys that I had no romantic feelings for at all. I just wanted to feel something. I wanted to have someone to talk to and to make me feel good about myself. I ended up forming a long distance relationship with this guy from back home. It gave me a reason to go back home almost every weekend and just escape this new life of mine that I just absolutely hated. It wasn't a super healthy relationship by any means, and that was 100% my fault. This guy was great. He treated me wonderfully and just amazing, but my heart just wasn't in it. And ultimately, I was using him to fill, this void within myself. And, it made me feel good and made me feel happy for a very short amount of time. But after a few months, I ultimately just completely ruined the relationship. And, then I was back to feeling alone and depressed. And in the midst of all of this, I lost a very close family member. She was my role model and one of my favorite people in the world that I could always go to about anything. And this was the one person in my life I would have felt 100% comfortable confiding in about my new issues and my new mental illness that had come over me in these last few months. And I just never got the chance to do that. But this was the first person that I had ever lost that I was super close to. It hit me really hard and it just took me deeper and deeper into this darkness. And at the same time, I was constantly anxious because I would just see pictures of all of my friends from back home that had either stayed and attended the local college or went away to college like I had. But these pictures and these Snapchats and these videos, they were just having the time of their lives. And I had lost touch with almost all of my friends from back home. And, that was partly my fault as well. Um, I just figured all my old friends were busy with their new lives and I didn't want to bother or burden them. They were meeting a bunch of new people, experiencing new things, and, I was happy for them. But anyways, I just felt like I was doing something wrong. Like, why were all my friends just, having the time of their life in college. Like, why couldn't I have that? And why couldn't I get there? And yeah, I could have joined a sorority and I could have ensured myself some new friends. I could have. I could have put myself out there more. I could have gone up to people. I could have introduced myself to people. And I asked myself so many times, why didn't I just do that? And I just couldn't. Like, I just felt so stuck. And sometimes it's just still so hard for me to explain. But I guess I had just gotten comfortable in my depressive state, which that sounds crazy to say, but at the time, like, like I said, I was just stuck. Um, I know some of you are thinking, why the heck didn't you just move home? And to that, I honestly can't answer either. I have no idea why I didn't just move home. I think I just convinced myself that that wasn't an option, and maybe I just needed to try somewhere new. So as the school year ended, I told myself I was going to transfer to another college, and that college was Louisiana Tech, which was 30 minutes away from my current school. And I had a few friends from high school that attended that college and loved it, and so I told myself, why not? Let's try something new. Anything, literally anything would be better than this. So I transferred the following year. It was a complete 180 in terms of meeting people and putting myself out there. I met tons of people. I went tons of places. I developed new habits, most of them horrible habits. But at the end of the day, this ended up just worsening my anxiety and depression. And trust me, I know how crazy that sounds. Everything I wanted at ULM, I got at Louisiana Tech. But somehow that just made my anxiety and depression worse. And there just felt like there was literally no escape from these issues. And all I could do is temporarily distract myself from these issues. And this is when I kind of learned to start putting on the inner makeup I talked about at the beginning of this episode, and faking this whole persona and fake self that I wanted to portray to these new people in my life. But when I got home from whatever I was doing and from whoever I was seeing, I slipped back into, this darkness. But I'm going to go into way more detail about my second college experience on my next podcast. And trust me, you are definitely not going to want to miss that, because that was 100% the craziest time of my life in the best and the worst ways, and has a lot to do with, the depression and anxiety I experienced in, the beginning of my stages of, those two illnesses. But uh, I kind of just want to wrap this up and tell you what to expect from the podcast in the future. Obviously, today I kind of started to tell you the beginning of my personal life story and how depression and anxiety entered my life. I'm going to share some more stories about that and how it affected me, how I learned from it. I'm going to talk about my personal experience with social anxiety, anxiety in relationships, anxiety in motherhood, anxiety in pregnancy, depression of all kinds. I'm just going to talk about it all. And once I pretty much finish talking about myself and my personal experiences and how I dealt with them and handled them and how I've grown from them and how they've eventually made me a better person and a more independent woman. After I'm done with all that, I'm going to have some friends and family on to discuss their issues and discuss how they dealt with them as well. I am in no way an expert on this subject, but I have dealt with these issues for a long time, and I have wanted to speak on them for a while now. I've dealt with anxiety and depression for about 7 years now. And it started, like I said earlier, when I started college in 2013, and has carried its way until this present day. It wasn't until 2019, so last year, that I actually finally opened up to someone about these issues. So 6 years of silently suffering. My life has changed tremendously since I opened up about it. And Honestly, it wasn't to a therapist or a doctor, it was to a friend. Um, I've honestly, honest to be completely honest, I've never gone to therapy and I've never sought medical help. I've never been professionally diagnosed with anxiety or depression, which I'm sure will cause some people to roll their eyes and wonder, why am I going on and on about these things when I'm not even diagnosed, I'm not being medicated. And what I'll say to those people is, if you really have experienced anxiety and depression, you know that you don't need someone else to tell you that you have this. Nobody in this world knows you and knows your heart and knows your soul and knows your body better than you do. And I just want to say, don't let anyone ever make you feel stupid or make you feel like you don't go through the things and have the things that you know that you do. And, maybe one day I will, seek therapy or seek medical help, but I think I just dealt with it for so long that I learned to, help myself through it and overcome these things. And I don't know, I am happy where I'm at, and I'm happy with how far I've come without having to seek professional help, even though I'm not against that. And I just think sometimes all you need is an ear to listen and the courage to finally admit to yourself and to the people close to you that you have a problem, and this problem is within yourself. Obviously, I still have depression and anxiety. Absolutely still have it, but it's not near as bad as it has been, these past 7 years. I've learned how to minimize it, how to control it, how to live with it, and I cannot wait to share that with all of you. For so long, I have dwelled in my past. I have regretted so many things, and that has just added to the anxiety and depression. It took me so long to accept the fact that you cannot change the past. It is what it is. I'm finally comfortable enough to talk about my past and my issues because, I've accepted them, and I'm choosing to learn from them and let them drive me instead of break me down. Um, you know, from this podcast, I'm not doing this to gain sympathy from anyone or to throw anyone under the bus that may have contributed to these issues that I've dealt with. So I just wanted to ease any anxiety to exes or people who are no longer in my life anymore. I promise this will never be a negative, me saying negative things about, anyone that has wronged me in the past. But I'm just here to bring light to some of these issues. I want some people out there to be like, wow, I've gone through that too, or I'm going through that too. How can I make myself feel better? How can I learn to deal with this? You aren't alone, I promise. I know, my podcast is called The Black Butterflies in the Soul, and honestly, they do still exist in my soul, but there are a lot less of them now. And I have a better understanding now of how to cage them and shut them up. And I just want to reach some of you. I want to bring light into your darkness and tell you that you can live with these issues and learn to minimize them. So, thank you so much for listening, and I can't wait to talk to you guys next week. Thank you.